Step into the light of the future with AC Infinity's Ion Frame LED grow light. Powered by industry-leading Samsung LM301H EVO diodes, it delivers unparalleled brightness and efficiency. Designed for serious growers, it offers a full spectrum of coverage, precise scheduled controls, as well as innovative sunrise and sunset dimming for a natural light cycle. Its modular, easy-to-manage system ensures optimal heat dissipation and seamless integration with all the smart grow setups that AC Infinity already offers. Experience growth without limits and results that speak for themselves. AC Infinity's Ion Frame EVO Series lights illuminate your path to exceptional yields and dank quality. Learn more at acinfinity.com and use discount code THESTASH15 at checkout to save some money on your order.
Are you a grower? Are you tired of lugging around too many bottles? Is it too expensive? Is it so confusing? Tired of reading feed charts? Well, guess what? There is an easier way. Introducing the Stash Blend. You can now get your bag of Stash Blend premium additives that you can add to your garden using just about any base nutrients. Go to stashblend.com and get your order today.
All right. Well, from the Stash Podcast, we got a great guest today. It's the homie, one and only Northern Scrogger. Troy, welcome.
Hey, thanks guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, dude. It's like I was trying to say before I botched the first recording. Longtime fan and friend, obviously. We bonded when we were in Las Vegas the first time together, but we got a little too litty, maybe smoked a little too much to film in person, so now we're doing it remote.
Yeah, I definitely lost my voice at the end of the week in Vegas this time. Holy crap, that was awesome though. What a great experience.
Yeah.
That was so much fun. We were recording for the very last day of our trip. We had gone hard. We'd done Fremont. You had partied it. You had gotten a nomination, if I'm not mistaken, for an award.
Best Teacher of the Year.
Best Teacher of the Year nominee, too. So you were at an event. You had a lot going on. So we were like, Troy, can you come hang out with us and record on the last day? You were like, yeah. You were all for it. Mine was like, yeah.
Yeah.
Body was like, no. And
Yeah,
so,
like, we gotta record today.
No voice.
But it would have been nice sitting in person. We'll do that again for sure. I'm sure.
Oh, 100%.
We're meeting in LA here soon, man. Growers Gauntlet. We may as well do some stuff then.
Exactly.
Oh, we 100%. Will. Thank you for joining us, man.
Though. Now that we're all even more colleagues, we're on the same network too. We got a show on AC. We got Scrog School every Sunday. Every other week we've got From the Stash Highly Educational. So it's like we may as well do something in the meantime, in between time.
I know, isn't that awesome? Like, shout out to AC Infinity for like supporting us all to have shows on their channels and like just keep spreading the words of like knowledge to everybody and helping people out in the community. Really, that's awesome.
It's pretty sweet, man. I honestly think that like we're at a time right now where this is like an ultimate. The game's never been this high, never been this elevated, and it's because of places like ACI, you know, and people like us, but more importantly, our communities that have like given us this ability to be put on a pedestal. And I don't know, sometimes I feel like I get more than I deserve, but ACI backs us up and they're like, yo, you know what? We got something for you. And so we were able to do some shows on their network, which is pretty sweet. And then we're going to be partying in LA together in a few weeks. So like, wow, man, that's pretty darn sweet, bro. So
what is this, season 4 of Scrog School?
This is season 4 of Straw School, yes.
Season 4, yeah. So season 4, this is basically the fourth run that you've had through this, and now being over on AC Infinity, we're kind of seeing a little different approach. Normally, you've got the organic garden bed. Maybe just for those who aren't familiar with you want to go over a little bit about your growing style and your background a little bit before we get too far?
Yeah, sure. Like, so people call me the Northern Scrogger. What I do is I mainly scrog my plants. I've now been growing a few plants not scrogged in my room as well, but for the most part, I'm a scrogger. So I run a little school called Scrog School over on the AC Infinity YouTube channel. Like what Rob said, this is season 4. So I have a few seasons to go. Like I've been on the Seedsman YouTube page, which is season 3, and my YouTube channel for season 1 and 2. For the first few seasons, it was all salt-based organics. I was always doing salts, and then I switched in season 3 over to organics to try that. And then now season 4, I'm back to organics and salt-based nutrients. So what I try to do is just teach people how to kind of grow in my style from seed to harvest with weekly videos, weekly live videos on the AC Infinity YouTube channel every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And so we're on episode 13 coming up this week, and we're in day number 17 of flower right now, and I'm done all my tucking. I teach people how to train their plants basically for the scrog technique.
How long have you been growing altogether?
Altogether, I've been growing for over 25 years. Cool little story was like how I started growing was when I was around 15, 16 years old, got into high school, maybe around 14, 15. That's when I got introduced to this plant, really, right? I started hanging with my friends and using it. And my mom, she was a grower, so I started kind of like dipping into the jars, dipping in here, kind of like just pinching it from her, right? And she caught me. She obviously, because like she's like, "Where's it all going?" So she just decided that, like, you know what, Troy's at the age now where I might as well teach him a skill. He loves this stuff, so I'm going to teach him how to actually grow it himself. So my mom taught me her tricks. She was a scrogger. She had a low space. She didn't have a high ceiling height. So she like grew in like a nice crawl space under 1 HPS 600 light, and she would scrogger plants out. And she just started teaching me how to like train my plants early and pretty much the technique of scrogging. I've adapted a few different kind of things to it, but she's the one who really put it on me. So yeah, I'm 40 now, and that was when I was in grade 9. So
gosh, bless your mom, man, for passing off real skills, real talents, and to raising her boy right. Good for you, man.
Sure.
And shout out to your mom.
Growers, man. That's the way.
Mrs. Scrogger.
She always encouraged me.
Mama Scrogger. Yeah, you're right. Sorry.
Yeah, she always encouraged to like smoke other than and not drink. She's like, I'd rather you smoke a joint with your friends than go and split a 26er with your friend. She's always in that sense. And now that I'm older, I'm like, I understand why she would say that, because like splitting a 26er is a lot more different than smoking a joint with somebody.
Yeah, exactly. Well, a lot more expensive too.
Yeah.
She was ahead of her time, being up in Canada now with federal legalization. It's like she was already growing for legalization prior to legalization in terms of getting the most bang for her buck
100%
with the smaller area and a smaller setup, essentially.
Yeah, for sure.
Canadian hippies, man.
And it was like, it seemed like a bad thing back then, right? Like my first time ever seeing that, I was really young. I was probably in like grade 4. And I kept noticing my parents going into the back shed. I'm like, why do they keep going out there when it's my bedtime? Like every time it's my bedtime, they sneak out the back and they go to the garage. So one time I just followed them like a little ninja. Like I slid in, kicked the doors open as they were shutting them, made sure they didn't lock behind them, did all that kind of stuff. And then I snuck up to the garage, and all I saw was like a big plastic sheeting, white plastic sheets in the middle of our office. And it was a big bright light inside, and I saw my parents' like body figures inside the plastic. It was kind of like aliens. Like, what the hell is this? I had no idea, right?
So aliens.
Like I walking up, and I just like looked in there all scared, and I just saw them tending to like a table full of clones. Now that I know what it all was a table full of clones. They're getting prepped to grow outside for that season. And at the same time, for some reason, a big bumblebee flew in at that exact moment. A real big bumblebee flew in there. It was like flying all around. So like it was a big panic mode for everyone, and I got the fuck out of there. And then the next day they got rid of them because they got nervous that I was going to like start talking at school, because like, I don't know about you, but our school, we had police officers come to our school and like get all the kids to come to the gym. Yeah. And they're like, do your parents have this looking stuff at home? And the kids are like, mine do. Mine do. They're like, good job, buddy. Here's a chocolate bar. And they're like, what's his name? so they got rid of it.
So true, man. It's so true. Yeah.
They did teach me not to be like that, but at the same time, I'd be scared too. Like back then it wasn't something to screw around with.
Yeah. I mean, it's the equivalent of manufacturing crack back then. So it's like,
pretty much,
I think the part with the plant that most people have, it's similar with my mom and my grandma. It's like, it's always been in my life, and it's never been weird. There hasn't been a stigma, because it's been normalized. Now with the legalization, it's easier to introduce family to it earlier on. I think when you're utilizing something like the scrog technique or the screen and green technique, you got more intimacy with the plant. You're in there and you're dealing with the stuff more. And I feel like that was you walking into the first scrog school. Of you know what I'm saying? That was your parents getting ready to start working stuff. Like, we got to start bending a little bit.
Yeah, pretty much, man. Exactly.
And for it to be 25 years ago, I mean, that just goes to show that this technique has been around for a very, very long time. I think a lot of new growers get into space and they think it's a new technique, which it really isn't. It's been around for a long, long time. And what best person to learn it from than you? So I'm really happy to have you on here.
Hey, thank you.
Why don't we get into the process of Scrog? Where would somebody start if they want to start Scrogging?
Screen of green.
Yeah, if you want to start Scrogging, like do you mean like where would you go find how to get the research, or like what would you do to your plant first? You mean
kind of? I guess what would you do? Well, everybody knows that they go to Scrog school. They want the information.
I Google search
right?
Scrog school first, just type it in Google, and then but
as far as like prepping their plant and when to add in the screen and kind of, I guess, walk us through just the beginning parts of it.
Yeah, for sure. So at the beginning, I just let my plants pretty much do their own thing in the solo cup. Let them get big enough before the transplant, right? Let the roots get full. And how I tell they're big enough for the transplant is I look at the top of the plant and I see the leaves are covering the cup. Once the cup disappears from a bird's eye view, I'm pretty much thinking like, okay, I can transplant now. So then I take it out of the solo cup, put them in the main pot, usually a 5 or 7 gallon pot, and then I wait about 3 days. After 3 days, the plants start growing pretty quick because like the first day they get established, the second they start really going, third day they're starting to do their thing. At that point, I normally bend them over once. I just put a 90-degree bend pretty much right on it, right in half. And then I just wait a couple of days. And then what I do is I keep on choking up on that tie because I use a tie off the bottom to keep the stem straight, and then tie off the top to bend the plant. And then the bottom tie always stays in the same position, just holding the stem straight as you keep bending the top the opposite direction. Just keep on doing that, choking up. Eventually, side branches will start shooting up. You got to start grabbing those branches now, then tying them down as well to the sides of the pots. What happens at that point, the center of the branches, they all start coming up. All the lower nodes from those branches that you're tying, those lower nodes are now exposed to the light almost at the same angle as the top. They're all going to start growing up. At that point, you're in around like say 4 weeks of veg. That's when I put my screens on. I always put my screens on 1 month into everything. So like that means germination, transplant. Then the first few weeks after transplant, I'm putting my screens on. So that gives me a month, right? And then at that point, I untie all my branches and let the branches kind of hit the screen. They all kind of bounce up to the screen. At that point, I just go around and I keep on tucking my branches underneath the screen for another usually month, but lately it's been around like another 4 weeks. So I'm usually in veg for around 7 weeks total, 7 to 8 weeks total. I'm usually at 7 now. And then I flip the flower and keep on tucking. So it is a bit of a process, but I teach it really well in Scrawl School, and it's actually easier than you think. It's just there is some work involved.
I think that's the biggest
Keep on tucking, just like it says on his shirt.
Yeah,
right?
keep on tucking.
Keep on tucking. Yeah,
that's awesome.
There is a lot of work. There's a lot of work, and there's no one to be. You can't fool anyone with that because these plants are very resilient. They will fight you every step of the process, and I mean in regards to they want to bounce up. They want to grow vertically, and you're trying to get them to go horizontally, and they're constantly resisting that.
Oh yeah,
and the amount of work you're doing is to make sure that they're just staying down and going out. It takes a lot of work. Do you find that you're feeding them how much more? Do you find you're feeding them more to keep up, or is you keeping it consistent with the recipe?
Yeah, I just keep it consistent. I follow the Athena program to basically right now. I'm following the Athena program to this point. You're supposed to use like say 10 liters of water per all of their measurements. Use 10 liters of water, say per 80 millimeters of bloom. Use 10 liters of water. I'm using 12 liters of water. Then I'm following what the chart says. So I am lower than what they're asking for, but I kind of do that on purpose. I'm always a little bit lower than what the bottle says. And then I react to my plants. If my plants look really hungry, then I up it or I lower my water down to like say 11 liters instead of 12. I just read the plants, and so far they're happy with like some couple points under what the bottle says. And no, I don't find myself feeding more. I just water until I have about 10% runoff. I feed every single time. Every watering is food because sometimes your plants get confused if it's like food then water, food then water. It can throw some stuff off. So I tend to just always feed the same. And then once I get the runoff, I'm looking for almost the same runoff as I am putting in, especially with cocoa. But there's a range, like within, like I'm looking for like my runoff to be, if I'm putting in say 2.5 EC of my Athena, I'm looking for my runoff to be say 3.2, just a little bit higher, not too much high. If it's above 5 EC, I'm talking about the Athena program. The Athena program has a high EC ratio. That's what I'm talking about right now because that's what I'm running. So it's fresh in my mind. I just stay under the 5 EC in my runoff, and it always is under 5 because the plants are eating a lot. So yeah, no, I don't find myself feeding more, man. It's just the way I train the plants. they'd be feeding that much anyway. Just those buds would be all underneath everything, all hidden underneath your big leaves and stuff. Basically.
Well, it's clearly not working for you because your plants look horrible. So no, it's working. Your plants look fantastic, and you're very open. You're very transparent with what you're doing and how your plants look. So if anyone is following along, they could kind of take your method and apply it in their scenario and kind of get the best results, or get their results.
Yeah, get their results for sure.
So
They mentioned that you start out in a solo cup and then you transplant up. What do you genuinely recommend when people ask you, hey, what container should I transplant up into, or what size container should I actually have as my final container in order to do the scrog technique? Is there a recommended minimum and maximum, or what?
Yeah, that all depends on what their veg time is going to be. Some people come to me and say, "Hey, sure, I want to like scrog a 10 by 10 with one plant." And I'm like, "Okay, man, we're going to be vegging for a long time because like my rooms are like sometimes like a 4x4 screen with one plant. And I'm almost at 2 month veg time, and I fill up my pots with roots, and they're like 5 gallon pots in that 2 month veg. So if you're going to be doing like a 4 month veg, like some people do, they veg for a really long time. That's when I would say you want to like up your pot size. But I would never say like do more than 2 transplants. Like I think from a solo cup to the final pot, no matter what, should be good. In my mind, but it's always different. Everyone that does their own thing. But for me, I'd always go into my final pot right after the solo cup because I don't want to like transplanting is not always the best thing for your plant, especially when you have a huge plant. Like I say, in a 4 gallon pot that you want to transplant now into a 15 gallon pot or something, you gotta like kind of wrestle that baby out of there and disturb a little.
Sucks to do. I hate. You're like trying to shake it out of there, this big old plant, and then it's bending the top. You're like, oh, you break a branch.
Yeah. Or you cut the fabric pot so you can like pull the sides down.
Yeah.
Sometimes the roots start to stick in on the inside of the fabric pot. So it's all about how long you want to veg for, is how big your final pot is going to be. That's what I would tell people for sure, because your plant, once you flip to flower, it's only going to grow roots for a couple of weeks, and then the roots stop growing and they just start feeding. But if you're in a small pot, you're going to be feeding a lot, right? So the smaller pot you use, the more watering and feeding you're going to have to be in that room applying to that pot. So I like to stick to a medium, like I'm 5-7 gallon if I'm growing in my ProMix HP, and I just gotta water every other day, and I'm good with every other day. Sometimes every second day. It's not always every other day. Sometimes I just feel my pots, because even though my pots are under a screen, I can still lift them an inch. There's enough flexibility in my screen to like kind of just lift my plants enough to feel the weight of it. So that's the cool thing about that. You can still judge your pots by lifting it, even by scrogging.
Totally can, and they'll talk to you too. They'll definitely let you know when they're thirsty. They're very open with watering.
Chris stole my question. I was actually going to ask what's the recommended pot size for a scrog, because it's such a big plant. Now, with that,
finally, I stole one of your questions. You usually steal my questions.
Most of the time, I see the notes and I take them, but this time I didn't have any notes. So, one thing about that pot size is the frequency of watering and feeding. If you're not using automated watering, I remember we talked, you didn't enjoy the Blue Mat tape piece or that little attachment on there. How are you dealing with watering something that's so flat, like pancaked out? Because oftentimes you'll start tucking right away and the plant will be pretty low, but then you need to build a water in there. So if you're using like a regular pot versus the garden bed like you would, how would you handle watering? How frequently would you be doing it?
Like, are you like asking me like how do I water them because they're so low? How do I get the water in the pot?
That, and then how do you water in ones that are pots versus the garden beds like that? Because you have it's a lot easier to get to the outside and get in there versus the pot. It's like inside. You got to get underneath that pancaked out plant.
Yeah, so that is a good question. People always ask me, how the hell do you water that stuff, man? So like what I do is like I went to Canadian Tire, Home Depot, or whatever you have where you live, and I bought something that you use for boats to put gas in your boat. It's like a big long hose that has like this siphon thing on the end of it, and then I have a pail, like a big 10 liter or 12 liter like little bucket, right, that with all my mixture of nutrients water in it, and I wheel that around on my little stainless steel cart in my room, and I put my hose in the pail, and all you gotta do is shake it, like just shake it like that, and the thing starts siphoning. Then I just hold it underneath my plants. Yeah, it just siphons it right in. and then like you just pull it out, and you just stick it out into the bottom of the pail, and it slows down the flow coming out, or it speeds up the flow if you lift it. It's a pretty nifty unit, right? And the flower beds, I just play it by ear myself. I read my plants, and like I keep the soil always moist. I have these kind of moisture meters right here. Actually, I have one right in front of me somehow. I have these guys all in my flower beds, and I just walk around. I just press a little button once in a while. I'm like, okay, you're within range. You're at like 75 bar. I'm happy with that. I want to be within 50 to 100. As long as this thing says 50 to 100 on that screen, then I'm pretty happy. And I have them all set at like as deep as it can go. A few at like 5 inches, a couple at 9 inches, just all different areas of my beds. So yeah, I just hand water them with my wand. The flower beds, it's really easy that way. Yeah, that's the thing about scrogging. I've definitely learned how to like water in weird positions.
Yeah.
I keep my screen super low. Like I only have a few inches from my screen to my pot. Like I recommend people to keep their screens at anywhere from like say 3 to 8 inches off the top of your pot. Mine's at 4 inches off the top of my pot. So
Not a lot of room in there to water.
Yeah, if you didn't have the right setup. So that's why I'm going to show that in Straw School actually coming up how I do it, because people do ask me, oh, like how do you get under there? I'm like, oh man, it's so easy.
With the right tools, man, you can make it easy. You got to make gardening work for you, or you're going to dread going in there. You're not going to want to water. Who wants to go down on their hands and knees and get themselves wet and get uncomfortable? And you don't want to play Twister while you're trying to.
You guys don't have knee pads?
Yeah, and I make sure the wife wears them all the time when she's watering the plants. So don't worry. Okay, don't worry.
Well, like, you know, that kind of brings to another point I wanted to touch on is like what equipment is needed. You know, a lot of people, they'll go and buy a pre-made trellis, or they'll get something that already is pre-configured for them in terms of the size of the net. I know yourself, you hand make it essentially, like you do it to fit the exact dimensions that you're looking for. What would be some initial tools that you need or items that you need to actually achieve the screen of green?
Yeah, so the top things on my list people would need is like some PVC pipe, obviously, to build it. Anything from like 3/4 to 1 inch. I've been using 1 inch. It's pretty cheap. You can find it at any like hardware store. Don't get the good PVC. Get like the cheaper stuff. It's usually like really thick and white. Then you're just gonna need some screws. You're gonna need some tees. So you want like some 4-way tees and some 3-way tees to fit your pipe, because that's what's gonna be the end of your scrog frames. And then whatever size hole spacing you want on your frame is what you measure, and you put a little black marker on each little spot. So if you want it to be 4 inches, you just put a black mark on 4 inch, black mark on 8 inch, then just keep on going to 12 and just keep working your way up, right? And then you just put a screw on every one of your black marks. Then you run your twine back and forth, but you gotta make sure that you like overlap your twine when you do your second run on the twine. So like your first time you go around the screen, but the second time you gotta put your twine on, you gotta like go under and over, under, over, under, over. Because that's what's going to make your screen tight when you're actually doing your scrog method. If you don't overlap your scrog screen, you just put one end to another, it's going to be all sloppy, and your string is going to move all around, and just it's not going to be the way that you want it. The branches are going to actually pull that stuff right over eventually. So those are like the key things. You're going to need some cutters to cut that PVC, and maybe a drill would be handy, right, to like put those screws in, because it's kind of hard by hand for sure. What else? Like you're gonna need your twine. I like to use masonry twine. If you can find masonry twine that has a wax coating on it, that's the best right there. That's really good. The nice little wax coating, but that's hard to find. People use hemp twine, which is great. It's biodegradable, and when you throw it in the garbage, it's biodegradable, right? So it's gonna just go away, but it leaves a lot of frays. So like you'll be using the hemp twine or any other kind of cheap plasticky kind of twine, and it's just going to leave like little hairs on coming off it, like frays, what you call it. It might get caught in your flower. You might see it once in a while. You might think it's a hair, but it's just really a piece of plastic or a piece of hemp. So I like to use the masonry twine. It's really tight, wrapped good, and doesn't fray. It's strong, but it's not biodegradable, unfortunately. I think that's
get over it.
Yeah, get over it.
Get over it. You know what I'm saying? But that I've used the hemp before, and it's definitely hairy situation, man. Like, and it sucks in a situation when you're trying to get it as tight as you can, and some areas are a little weaker, and it'll just snap. Like, yeah, it's not as good. I do think that having something with that coating on there will be helpful in terms of not getting stuck with your trichomes or trichromes if you're one of those, and and you're able to have more stability in that net too. Because too much give obviously isn't ideal. Like the elastic trellis nettings you'll see often. those I think are just trellis nets. They're not as ideal for scrogging.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. More so even because like it's hard to harvest when you just use like those bungee kind of trellis nets. Harvest becomes, especially if you're scrogging. If you're just growing them as a normal trellis system, you can just cut the branches right where they go through, the like the material, right? But when you use a scrog technique like I do, you don't really want to use that rubbery stuff because you don't want to cut it because like, you want to like keep it because you just spent money on like a more than twine cost. So with the way that I do it, you just cut two sides of that frame. When you're ready to harvest, just cut two sides of the twine and then go to the opposite sides and just slide it out, just pull them out. And they all just slide right through the buds, especially if you get the wax coating ones because it just slides right out real nice. It doesn't leave wax on anything. It just slides. It's nice. But even masonry twine comes out no problem. And then the plant it still just sits there. It doesn't like fall over. It doesn't fall on the ground. It doesn't break. All the branches don't break. It kind of just sits there like a mushroom. You're like, holy crap. Then you can cut it at the base and you can hold it, take a picture, like do whatever you want with it. That's what I like to do with them. Make a big bouquet.
I've seen these photos, and you can bring a bouquet like that to me anytime, boy. Anytime.
Yeah, that's the
I
one.
see one of your pictures made high times.
Yeah.
That was super cool, man.
Yeah, the one picture.
Incredible.
That was awesome. That was like a highlight, obviously a huge highlight for me right there.
Oh yeah, dude.
Mentioned
And
by
especially
high times.
like the only other person I've ever seen who was doing the actual scrog technique as consistently. We got Beast Coast was a homie of the show, but then before that was a guy they called the Scrog King.
Yeah.
And that dude would kill it, man. Like he didn't have a lot of stuff on the internet to find information to learn his technique per se, but the imagery was crazy, dude. He'd just take pictures looking with his back against it.
Just turn that one plant. Yeah, that one
you know what
plant
I'm
was a
talking
famous plant.
Dude, man, just killing it. And that was for me what got me to originally do the screen and green technique is because I was like, man, I'm trying to get a pound off this plant.
Yes.
So I had one 600 watt HID light at the time, high pressure sodium, and I just ran one big beast in deep water culture. And I got, at the time, it wasn't a great yielder, but I still got 15 ounces of quality flour and like 2 ounces of not so great flour. But it was my first time pulling a pound off one plant. I'm like, bro, what that?
Yeah.
Fed it for about 2 months. It was in a 18-gallon self-made hydro container, and it worked pretty well.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And in that case, it's like you look at the sacrifice in terms of your veg, and like maybe not as many harvests per year, but you look at the amount of quality even buds. You definitely get more through a single technique versus just throwing a bunch of plants in. Do you see a benefit of doing the screen of green, let's say, versus the sea of green, which would just be a bunch of little plants thrown in there at once? Do you see, I mean, I guess obviously in Canada, plant count, that's your biggest thing.
Yep. 100%.
But do you notice more benefit from the single plant, focusing on that versus a bunch?
Well, a lot of people, I've had this conversation a lot. Obviously, like I have people say, like, why don't you just throw more plants in, way less work? But then they think about it, you gotta water all those plants, right? You gotta like feed all those plants too. Like, so like, yeah, it's less work, but now you're looking after 15 little pots in there. All I'm doing is tucking. I'm looking after one pot. I'm playing with my plant. I'm learning how to like tuck it, maneuver it. I'm creating my own canopy. That's what I'm doing. So like, the difference is I appreciate both techniques. I'm not saying like scrogging is way better because scrogging has been around forever, just like what Chris was saying, just like SOG has been around forever. These techniques have all been around forever. I don't think anything's better than the other one. It's just like what you prefer. But in my mind, like they're both the same amount of work because yeah, you have 15 plants. You're not going to be doing much training because all you do is you grow them from a clone at the exact same height, flip the flower at the exact same time. You might pinch off a few little lower nodes here to keep them all even. Then you're just watering everything. With the scrog, yeah, you're like tucking everything and then like defoliating that one big plant eventually. But all you're doing is watering one pot. So
sea green sucks. That's what I would say.
We're scroggers.
Two totally different styles. I've seen some people use it in ebb and flow systems or flood and drain. Is really to kill it. You know what I mean? Because that is just on like a timer and it waters them at a certain time period and for a certain length.
Yes.
And instead of going there and watering each individual container by hand, having an auto watering system of some sort, it makes that process a lot easier
for sure.
in SOG technique, right?
Yeah, if you have the automated watering system, yeah, that changes everything for sure. For that,
that costs money.
Yeah, or if you just have people that water for you, you get a bunch of small children,
naked women in there.
Yeah, whatever,
They
whatever.
can't wear clothes because they could steal your product. Everyone knows this.
Yep.
We never heard of the cartel
smuggling out a plant.
Yeah, just under your shirt. It's totally normal. I think a lot of people look at the screen to green technique as trying to get the most yield that they can get out of it, but I also think it's uniformity and the consistency. You know what I'm saying? Like people will get a few top colas and then it's kind of larfy buds for some people if they don't train their plant properly. As we're utilizing that screen to green technique, it's rare to get larfy buds. Like you've got all nice big uniform crowns, all perfectly
Yeah,
like almost like clones all in there. Sometimes from the top of the canopy, it's hard to tell if it's sea green or screen green because there's just so
exactly.
many buds filled out.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I noticed that as well. Like that sea green looks just like my one plant with your like 8 plants right there. I did the same thing with my one plant in the same amount of veg time, and they're not maybe not the same amount of veg time actually, because like they usually flip real quick. But unless they're growing from seed, it might be the same amount of veg time. To be honest with you, because they usually veg for at least a month and a half to get that plant established, maybe a bit shorter. But yeah, it's just a different
Yeah,
technique, and it's all
six
what you
weeks.
prefer. Your plant count, your space that you have. It's a whole bunch of little tech things to it. Like just what you prefer, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think it's come down to personal preference. And, one of the challenges we kind of talked about underneath watering the plant, how to access the bottom of the plant. I know a lot of people who have challenges accessing the top part of the plant as well. Maybe they're doing the scrog technique in a grow tent, for example, right? And kind of reaching over might be a little bit difficult. Do you have any tips for kind of accessing the plant all around? Is there any methods that you use to kind of make things easier for you to access both the middle and back part of the plant?
Yeah. Before I set my space up or set up any scrog in any space, I make sure that you have 3 sides of access always. You don't need 4, you just need 3, because from the sides you can work on the back, right? So that's one thing that I would tell people for sure is make sure 100% you have 3 points of access on all 3 sides. You can't do it in a tent that has one front door. That's so hard because like yeah, you got to reach over from your back. That's going to break your back after a while, like reaching in like that. So you just got to think about like your situation and your space, and you got to think about tucking and defoliating, and then like I'm saying, think about it before you start your grow. You got to vision your plants like doing the best they can, and just vision the big huge flowering room in your little tent. Just be like, okay, like I got to get back there to trim those leaves off, then try to do it if you just have a single door tent. I bet it'll be hard. So yeah, just make sure you have access. If you're the kind of person that can't get on the ground, because I grow a lot of my scrogs like right on the ground. I don't know why. I just always learned that way, and I just stick to it. But at the same time, my season 1 at Scrog School, I did it on platforms. My room right here was like a 20-foot long table with like I think I had like eight 5-gallon pots under it, and I filled the whole table full of colas. It was pretty wild actually. And it was a platform scrog, so I could just walk around. I didn't have to bend over to like tuck or work on my canopy. It was just perfectly right there for me. It was really nice, a platform Strogan. So you can build your platform to height for your wheelchair. If you're like in a wheelchair, you can wheel around and have the platform built right to your chest height. Just work on your plants. Accessibility is key. So yeah, you want 3 sides no matter what. And you want to be able to kind of get underneath your frame as well a little bit to defoliate underneath the screen as well. So just make sure you have access to get underneath everything, and just make sure you can reach the whole screen before you start growing on it.
When are you gonna do the Mission
That's-
Impossible, bro? Come on, you gotta
That
get
would
a
be the
rig
best.
set up so you could just.
Dude,
I
that'd be
would
a
love
dope
that.
scrog school if you come just dropping in and then Titty Cam sees it from up top. Oh man, dude. It's like,
I think you know what? I think one of my
got a
one of
harness?
my Strog Nation dudes had that in his closet or something. I think he did have a system like that where he had a harness on his ceiling, and he was able to like put a little harness on, and he would go in there like that. I'm not even lying. I'm not even kidding.
Reminds me of like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids going over the grass looking for the kids.
Yeah, me too. I'm gonna try to find this guy, and I'm gonna share it with you guys. And you'd be like, "Oh my god, he's right. It's crazy."
Hopefully he's
I'm
not
pretty
like one of
sure.
those dudes who does hooks in his back and hangs. You ever seen that?
Yeah,
Ugh.
like 2x4s.
Yeah. And then he's hanging and gardening though.
Ew.
It's talent. I think
Season
That's some
5.
really good tips. That's some really good tips with as far as accessing from the 3 different sides at least.
Mhm.
I did want to bring up a cool, innovative thing that I saw, and I'm sure you're familiar with it. Is the Instagram user Hazy Susan Scrogger.
Oh yeah.
So
Scrog
got to
Nation.
give a shout out to them.
Yeah.
It was really cool seeing their setup to where they're in a grow tent and they created a circle scrog, right? So it's like that supports double net, and it's on a lazy Susan. So it's like a rotating tray. So they're able to actually just rotate that whole tray and access their plants that way. So I thought that was really cool. I
Yeah.
figured I'd mention that one.
Yeah, I should have gave him a shout out there for sure because he's one of my main bros that fully gapped out. But that's amazing. He has like a hazy Susan, and the thing just spins around. He can foliate, water the plants. Everything is so awesome.
Just stay in one spot and just work it.
Yeah,
Like that's
that's
see
genius.
the innovation, man. I think there's products that I've seen at the grocery store before that are big and clunky, like metal pieces to set up basically a scrog, and they weren't ideal. But doing things like that, being able to set that up, I could see that being a pre-made product that people purchase over time. You know,
Yeah, something like that would be great if you could like draft out a real nice system and set it up like that for sure. That'd be great.
The game is so novice right now. You think about it, we're just coming out with bungee cord nylons for trellises, boys. So imagine when we start to get like devices and equipment designed for a scrog. Like the Hazy Susan is like awesome.
Mhm.
And imagine when we start to see that coming out as like a regular product for people in their tents doing stuff. Like it's coming. You know, it won't be long.
Coming, for sure.
Won't be
There's some
long.
crazy stuff out there. It's awesome.
Yeah, I love the innovation.
yeah, man. So I think when it comes down to scrogging, of course, it's someone's opinion if they think it's better or not. But have you had an experience of not running a scrog and seen the difference of the plant? And was it
Yeah.
something that you're like, yeah, this is fine? Or do you feel like scrogging is just the way?
Oh yeah, like I've worked in grow facilities around town and where I live. Like it's all opened up, so I went and worked at a few for a few years and just learned what it's like to be in like a big facility growing stuff, right? And like they don't use scrog technique like I do. They just use trellis nets. And honestly, with those plants, I find a huge difference. I like each plant had like maybe 2 or 3, maybe 4 nice big colas on the top, and everything else was just like all larvae lost in the canopy of like hugeness, right? Like it's this mass production, get it done. So like yeah, the few top crowns are nice, but yeah, everything else is underneath. That's just that kind of setup is commercial. But for home growers, it all depends on how you train your plant, really. Like some people are really good at maximizing their canopies. I have a few behind me here that I'd never scrogged. One of my plants right here behind me is a non-scrog plant, but it's my favorite. It's the best plant in the room in my mind. Like the thing, I have like a lot of colas coming off it, and it's just like blowing up all over the place. Like it's a beautiful plant. So I just honestly, it's a preference thing and everything. Like everyone, I think there's no right or wrong way of growing. That I think everyone just has their own way of doing it. Like, and then you can expand and learn other ways. And next thing you know, you're a master at every way, and then you just get better at every way. So yeah, it's hard to really tell that, but there is less larva for scrogging sometimes in my mind. That's for sure. Like unless you're good at training your plant, open them up and expose the light, defoliate, a lot of airflow.
Are there any genetics that speak to you that aren't great for scrogging? I saw the note
Because he's touched on the one isn't like, are you consciously not scrogging that one because it doesn't do as well in a scrog, or is it just because it's just an extra plant?
Yeah, no, I do. I scrog everything, but the tough ones are pure indicas. Pure indica plants are really tough to scrog because they're really short, bushy. The node spacing is usually pretty tight on them. They don't grow real fast, vigorous. They're like the slow growth, little short bush. So plus they get real thick. Their stems get really strong too. So it's kind of hard to keep on tucking them. But in the end, those indica scrogs look really, really nice because, like I said, they grow real short nodal spacing, so all of their colas are pretty uniform off the canopy in the end. But they are a little bit more difficult to scrog than say like a sativa hybrid or like the new hybrids that are coming out that are meant to grow big and strong, right? Like people want big plants these days. So now like I feel like a lot of plants are being bred to grow kind of big and they get pretty big. So those are easier to scrog as those kind of plants that like to stretch a little bit more than like a pure nice little short indica plant would.
Is there a too big? Do you think? Like, can you go too big?
A lot of size queens out there.
Hey, hey, size doesn't matter. I don't see size.
There's not a too big. It's just you need to understand your screen size because like if the plant gets too big and you're on a small screen, then they're all you're gonna run out of tucking space. And then you're going to have to understand that you're going to need a second level of support to support all these branches that come up off the first screen because your plant's getting so big. Or your plant's going to get big and you have a big screen ready for that, right? So you just got to really think about it in your situation and be like, hey, this plant's meant to get like huge. So I'm going to put it under just a 5x5 by itself. That's what I normally do, like just one plant under 4x4 or a 5x5. And normally you're pretty good with that. But I do use 4-way tees on every one of my frames just in case the plant fills the screen and the buds all stretch up real high and I need to like support things. I just put another section of my poles on my tees and then run another trellis over top, and then that catches all the top colas that are flopping around if that happens.
Learning
Yeah,
from
you don't want those little
experience.
floppy wieners going everywhere, man. I think that's where it's like people will see the benefit if they tune into Scrog School. If they watch any of the stuff you've done in the past, you've got a great Facebook group as well, and Discord as well.
Yeah.
And these are places that it's not just your example; it's people who've been following what you're doing. Luke McCannabis Loop, Loop. I call him MC.
Yeah.
The MC. Loop. He's killing it, man. I mean,
Yeah, he
literally
is
like
killing
Protege,
it.
where you can see the process of every plant looks like he's taking the same plant over and over and over. You know what I'm saying? Different
Oh, for
genetics. He's got a
sure.
Chill Out OG. I'm like, what? That's Chill Out OG. How did he do
Yeah, it
that?
is.
You know, it's really you train the plant. It may take a little bit longer, but you keep on tucking and you train for gains. You really can get that beautiful, big, uniform plant that produces what you're looking for in terms of like beautiful, thick colas and uniformity and consistency. But then also at the same time, like you were saying, you're getting intimate with that plant. You're getting closer. You're learning more about it than just run and gun in a lot of little plants and tons of harvests.
Yeah, that's what I like. I personally myself, I just teach people how I do it, right? And like I personally myself, I love working on my plants. Like that's like therapeutic to me. Like that is what gives me. I've been doing it for a long time. Like guys, I was growing before like you were supposed to grow, right? We mentioned this, and like it's just my time. I always considered it to be my time. Like when I come in this room, I'm by myself. Like my partner doesn't work in here with me. My children obviously, or my child doesn't come in here. She's too young for that still. This is my space, and like I just take this as like my opportunity to like just have my thoughts and like work on my plants at the same time, snap some branches, get mad at myself, you know, when I'm tucking. Like it's just my little space that I enjoy everything in here. And yeah, man, for sure.
You were the Tom of your space.
It could be therapeutic, you know. It's yeah, the gardening can certainly be therapeutic.
Yeah, man.
I do want to ask, get a little bit deeper into from a full net, flipping to flower, and then getting through that stretch period. So correct me if I'm wrong, but you are vegging the plant until the net is full, then you're flipping the flower. Walk us through it. How long are you actually continuing to tuck? And then, you know, is there a specific day that you're just letting it go from there and letting them grow upwards from there, or what?
Yeah, so what I actually do is I fill my screens until they're about like say 70 to 80% full. Once I see they're about 70 to 80% full, that's when I flip the flower. And then during that stretch is when I keep on tucking to try to fill the rest of that remaining 20% or so. Sometimes I make it, sometimes I don't make it. So normally, like for this run, for example, I tucked for 12 days after I flipped to 12-12. So most of my screens are actually almost pretty full. So a few of them are full, some of them aren't quite as full, but I'm pretty much where I want to be. Like this is where I basically aim for. I aim for one screen. I don't want to use another level, but I'm prepared for that. So yeah, I usually tuck for around say 10 to 16 days after I flip to 12-12 is when I continue tucking for. That all depends on how tall I want my canopy to be. If I want my canopy to be shorter, I keep on tucking during that flower stretch. If I want my canopy to be a bit taller, I stop tucking and let it just rise up. I try to keep my canopies around 6 inches off the top of my screen. I want like a 6-inch canopy on all my colas. That's what I aim for. Sometimes it's shorter, sometimes it's higher. It's always kind of different. It's just a plant, but I try my best to keep it around 6 inches, and yeah, that's what I go for. So yeah, I flip at 70 to 80% screen full. I need some space left to keep tucking during stretch.
That's good to know. Yeah, I made the mistake of tucking for too long before. And you know, I tucked all the way just about until the plant was done stretching, and they had all the buds were stuck within the net, and I wasn't getting much upward growth. So I was just curious to see how long you tucked it for after flipping to flower,
Yeah.
and to, you know, just let it go from there and let them grow up.
Yeah,
Like a grapevine.
that's also a skill that you will learn as a grower the more you scrog is judging when that stretch is kind of slowing down. Like sometimes it's hard to judge that until you do it a few times. Then you're like, okay, it seems like it's starting to slow down now. Because sometimes when I was younger, I would stop tucking and be like, okay, I'm probably good now. Then soon my plants would be huge and they'll be flopping over. I'm like, I kept tucking, or I go away for a weekend and come back. Like those are vital times. When you flip the 12-12, you got to make sure you're in your room each day, because they'll grow like 3 inches in one day. They possibly, right? They can really grow in growth spurts at that stage. So I made mistakes of going away for a weekend once after I flipped. That was last season. I went away and I came back and I was like, I can't even tuck them because they're too far above. I'll break the branches trying to pull them back. So like it's all a judgment thing, and you'll learn how your plant is and how quick it's growing in the flower stage, and then you gotta stop if you want to have nice colas or short colas. It's all up to you.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting too that you only use one net, because I remember Beast Coast when he came on, he was adamant for him 2 nets. So it just goes to show again 2 different styles, right? And both getting very great, great results.
Great results.
And something that I've learned in the scrogging, like I've dug into it obviously in the past and see who's been doing it a long time ago before my mom even. And like I feel like the old timers, they use one screen. Like you don't see an old time scrog like back in the 80s with double screens. It wasn't a thing. It was just one screen, and the nugs are usually just like, they're not even that big. They're just like on top of the screen. They're usually real big chunky buds actually. But like it always just was a one screen. So the way I learned was just a one screen. I never even knew 2 screens existed when I first learned. I didn't even think of it, right? Until I started like getting older. I'm like, well, they have 2 screen thing. That's a good idea. Then I started like learning more into it. But yeah, when I first learned, man, it was the OG way, one screen, or just one screen. That's how you do it. Basically, because of low spaces. That's why people mainly scrog, like mainly, and like style, like or like you can scrog anything. Like I've saw like Egyptian drawings and pyramids of like scrog plants, probably grapevines. They
Yeah,
grow
man,
the
it's
grapes
just
out, and they would scrog them, and all the grapes hang low. Like that's a scrog. It's not like, it's just a different plant, but it's
a screen of
scrogging
green.
technique. It's a screen, and they're using that screen to train that plant.
Yeah,
So it's been around for a long time.
They do it for vines on regular grapevines, or
like that's how a lot of times how people would utilize that technique, and then they just remove the training mechanism that's on there. I think in today's day and age, seeing the evolution of the home grower and the commercial grow, because again, I've worked in commercial grows, I've seen it too with a double trellis. It's taking some of those things and bringing it to the home grow and adding into what we've already done that works really well. Obviously, we see it works good. I think there's more, evolution now we're seeing with, let's say, like the beds, the soil beds, the organic soil beds like you have, and automated watering, and anything that essentially simplifies the process but also enhances the process, because that's really what the whole goal of the additional training is. A lot of people, I think they'll sleep on it because they don't see the benefits like what you're doing there, but if you're able to take the time, it's really just more time is what people don't want to do, is that little bit more work and a little bit more time, but the results speak for themselves. I really feel like scrogging is the way for people who are home growers who don't have a lot of space or are limited on plants. And if you can't get to that, don't be upset when you're getting a little larf. Make some good hash.
It's also a great technique for making hash, because all you're getting is top colas, right? So when I harvest my plants now, because like I make hash now, so I just cut all these top colas off, put them in a freezer bag, put them in my freezer. It's so simple now for me to but harvesting in general when you scrog is actually easier because you're trimming top colas. So if you like just to trim top buds, then you want to be a scrogger, because every bud you grab from that trim bin, you're like, oh my god, look at this one. Trim it up, grab another one. Oh my god, another top. It's just all tops. Like it's not. That's what I used to love when I used to dry my weed, but now I don't do that.
You don't dry your whoa. I misunderstood. You don't dry your herb anymore?
No, I chop it and put it right in the freezer. And
right.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. All right, I got you.
I'm on that train now.
Good.
It seems to be the Canadian way, man. Between you, 420 things, P's the only one I'm seeing missing that. But he usually is a little late to the party.
I'm slow.
It's the flavor thing, man. It's like once you have that flavor of certain products, you almost don't want to go back. I feel like if I would have done that with my donuts, like Mike's doing with his, I wouldn't be so salty. But instead, I got this bland drywall terp. Nothing.
Yes, it does change it. It changes it a lot.
Yep, the agitation. We'll have to maybe have a follow up in person. We'll talk about maybe some rosin. because now you've been diving deep into that, and especially from the home grower to be able to take your whole plant and do it easy. You don't have to be some scientist.
Yeah, you don't
That'd
have
be
to be.
cool.
No, you don't. You need the equipment though. That's important. And there is expensive stuff. Like it's not cheap to have the right stuff. Like I spent a lot of money to have it. Like I brought a freeze dryer. That's like almost 5 grand Canadian right there, right? The press, it wasn't that much. I bought a used press, but it's basically new. So like, you can save money, but you still got to like spend some money if you want to make a good product. Um, for me, anyways, I'm sure there's so many ways around it that you can do it on a discount. But I'm new to it, and I just did it the way that I want to do it right away and just get it done because I didn't want to make hash real bad last season. It was fun, man. I love it. It's such a cool process. Pressing it, and seeing it all come out, like putting it in a jar and watching it cure. It's fun.
Oh yeah, man. Well, dude, amazing tips, amazing conversation. I'm excited for the next conversation, and we're gonna be on Pigeon's show that he has, Tea with P. Get a little buzz and hang out. Probably should have invited Chris too. It would have been great, but I know he'd be like the most frequent guest, be his 10th time on the show. But yeah, dude, where can people find you, man? Like we know Scrog School, obviously, every Sunday, AC Infinity, 7 Eastern. What about where can everybody find you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram as the Northern Scrogger. I also have a Facebook page as the business page called Northern Scrogger. I also have a Scroggers group on Facebook called Scroggers. We have Discord called Scroggers. Yeah, that's pretty much where people can find me for sure. I'll be I'm coming out in a book called the Grow Bible. That's going to be coming out in a couple months here. I have a nice section on how to scrog in the Grow Bible coming out here pretty soon.
That's cool,
so,
man.
Sweet.
yeah, it's gonna be pretty
That's
fun.
awesome.
Excited about that.
Good for you, man.
Thank you.
You've
Yeah,
been doing
so
your
if you-
rounds, man,
Dude,
and
absolutely,
it's
man.
well earned, man. You definitely deserve it, and it's been exciting to watch. And I
Yeah,
can't wait
An
to ride your coattails.
award-nominated teacher.
Yeah,
The homie
that
right
was
here, dude.
crazy.
I'm telling you, man. Like it's that. Like I said when we were in Vegas, dude. When we first met, the accolade to start that, and again, you haven't been doing the internet education as long, but you've been growing so long. So now you're just bringing it out there. It really just shows the evolution of the home grower to teaching the masses. You know what I'm saying? We're coming out of the dark and we're teaching people, and I love to see that Scrog School is staying consistent. It's following along as you're changing things up, and I'm excited to have you on our show again for From the Stash Highly Educational. We'll be doing that on our training episode, man.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, man.
I'm excited. I can't wait for that episode, and yeah, good for you guys too for having that show. You know what? It's nice that we're getting out there and just sharing everything that we all know. Plus, we're all going to learn from these shows too. Like I learn every day. Like when I read the chats on Scroll School, like I'm like, holy shit, I never do that. Like I learn stuff all the time in the comment section. Like it's pretty
Oh
cool
yeah, dude.
how the community works that way.
Each one teach one, man.
For
Well,
sure.
dude, we'll stick around here for a minute after this. We'll chat for a second, but dude, banger of an episode. Appreciate you joining us for this. And yeah, this is From the Stash Podcast From the Stash Podcast. I'm Rob. Pigeons 420, Mr. Grow It. We got Northern Scrogger. Appreciate you guys. Stay lifted.
See you later.
Just want to give a big shout out to all the patrons who support this channel. Without you guys, it would be so much harder to produce. You literally help us make this happen. If you want to be able to continue to help From the Stash grow, go to patreon.com/FromTheStash and join.